Hello and welcome to your pre-algebra recording for the week of May 3rd. So welcome to May. We are in the final stretch of the school year, in the same month now that our last day of school is in. We're about 2.5 weeks out from the end of the school year, so that's pretty exciting. We're almost about 3 weeks. I should say we're about 3 weeks from the end of the school year. So this week, in the last few weeks of the school year, we're really going to focus on looking at ways that some of the math that you've learned about this year is used in the real world and used with different types of careers. So the last couple of weeks should be pretty fun in that we're going to kind of look at and review some of the concepts we've learned, and then again, as I mentioned, see those concepts being used in real world math and real careers and the way that people use the math we're learning about every day in their careers. So the next concept we're going to take a look at and how it's used in the real world with some different careers is slope. So we learned about slope, last semester. I believe it was last semester. So it's been some time that we've looked at slope. And slope is something that you're also going to see next year in math, the following year in math, and the year after that in math. So slope is a reoccurring concept that you're going to keep seeing over and over again in math. So I thought it would be a great time to review slope so that when you see it again next year, you really understand that idea of slope, and anytime you see slope, it's a little bit easier to work with slope. So let's review what is slope and what does slope tell you. So in your math notebook, yep, you should have your math notebook out at this time. I want you to jot down a couple of thoughts that you have for what slope is and what does slope tell you. So just take some time to brainstorm and think back about what slope is and get some of those ideas into your math notebook. So if you need more time, go ahead and click pause and write down your thoughts. And then when you're ready to join back in, go ahead and click play. All right, so slope. I'm going to skip ahead to this slide right here. What is slope? So this slide has lots of information about what slope is. So slope tells us of the steepness of a line. So it tells us how steep a line is. Remember, we can have both positive slope and we can have negative slope. So if we rise from left to right as we go read our graph from left to right, as if our line is rising or getting steeper, then we would say it has positive slope. If our slope is falling as we read our graph from left to right, we would say it has negative slope. Remember, slope is rise over run, and that helps us calculate slope. Rise, remember your y variable is always going to be your vertical, tells you up and down. So slope is change in the y coordinates over change in your x coordinates. Remember, the x coordinates tell you the horizontal movement. So that's a way to remember rise over run is slope. And then when we talk about slope in equations, m always represents slope. So lots of review stuff about slope in this one slide right here. I'm going to keep going. So what are we doing this week? I guess I'll kind of stop and talk about what we're going to do and then go back to slope. So you will be taking the bivariate quiz. Many of you probably already have done that with the way that I inserted the recording in later in the week this week. So hopefully you're already done with the bivariate quiz. If you are not, go ahead and do that. That's going to wrap up Unit 10. And then we're going to again talk about slope review, and you guys will do a fun activity where you're going to actually explore and do an exploration of your own where you find the slope of a stairway either at your house, at school, at a park, outside, anywhere that you can find a set of stairs. You're going to find the slope of those stairs. So let's go back to slope. Again, Slope is rise over run. That's an easy way for us to remember slope and how to find slope, which will tell us how steep something is, like a stairway. So slope is rise. So the rise is going to be your change in your y coordinates. That's going to be the rise, the change in your y coordinates, where the run is talking about that horizontal movement. It's talking about the change in your x coordinates. So again, just some review here of what slope is and how we calculate it. Rise over run. So the rise is going to represent the change in your y coordinates, where the run, talking about the horizontal movement, would all be the change in your x coordinates. And we're going to actually review how we find the slope when we're given 2 points. So I just want to remind everybody what slope is. We talked a lot about this already. Just another slide to just really reinstate or reiterate what slope is. So remember, slope is the steepness of a line as we go from left to right. Slope is the ratio of rise, or the vertical change, over the run, which is the horizontal change. And just something that we haven't really talked about yet, just to review, the slope is always going to be constant, no matter what 2 points on the line you choose. So if you've got a line, like this line right here, the slope is going to be the same throughout this line. We wouldn't have we would not have a different slope at between any 2 points. It's always going to be the same slope. It's going to be consistent for a line. So let's go ahead and jump into and review how we find the slope when we're given 2 points. So rise, remember, is a change in your y coordinates. So what you're going to do is you're going to take your second y coordinate and subtract it from the first y coordinate. And then you're going to divide it by the run, or the horizontal change. So you're going to take your second x coordinate and subtract it from your first x coordinate. So this is how we find the slope when we're given 2 points. So here's an example. We've got 2 points. So let's go ahead and label these points so that you see what I mean when we talk about the x's 1s and the y1, y2. So 2, 7, this coordinate right here, 2, 7, this coordinate represents our first point that would be on a line. So if we were to graph these points, and we wanted to, these are 2 points that fall on a line. They sit on a line. So 2, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's our first point, our second point, 5, and up 9. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to find the slope of the line that goes between those 2 points. We're trying to find the slope of the line that goes through those points. So our first point, 2, 7, that's our first point. So we would call this our first x coordinate, or x1, and our first y coordinate, or y1. Then the other point, so that point was right here, 2, 7, and then our other point, 5, 9, we would call this our second x coordinate and our second y coordinate. So now we can plug these coordinates into the slope formula to find the slope. So again, to find slope, we take the second y coordinate. So we're going to take the second y coordinate and subtract it from the first y coordinate. So I'm going to do 9 minus 7. And then I'm going to put that over the change in my x coordinate. So I'm going to take the second x coordinate and subtract this first x coordinate from that. So it would be 5 minus 2. I do the math. 9 minus 7 is 2, and 5 minus 2 is 3. So the slope of this line is going to be 2 over 3. So that tells us between each and every point on this line, we're going to move 2 units to the right and then 3 units up. And that's going to, if we keep continuing that pattern between all of our points, that'll tell us the slope of that line. Rise over run. We go 2 units, rise. Oops, I said that backwards. I'm sorry. Let me fix that. Whoa. Just want to get rid of this part here. Oh, I lost my line. I'll put that back in there. So let me restate what I just said because I said that opposite there. So rise over run is what I wanted to say. Rise over run. So we go 2 units up between each points and 3 units to the right. Sometimes when I multitask, I say things wrong. So 3 units to the right and 2 units up. Rise over run. And if we keep continuing that, that'll tell us the steepness of our line. Rise over run. All right, I'm going to go on to the next slide. So if you need more time, go ahead and click pause so that you can take this example down and have an example to refer back to as when you go to do this week's assignments. It's always nice to have an example to refer back to. All righty. Here's another example where we've got some positive and negative numbers. So one thing we have to be careful for when we find slope is, remember, we're always subtracting between the x's and the y's. So sometimes if you have a negative number that you're subtracting, you'll have a double negative, and that's okay. So just remember that sometimes you will have a double negative. So let's try this. Let's find the slope between point -4 and 1 and point 4, -2. So I went ahead and labeled those coordinates as your first x coordinate with the x1, y1, and the second coordinate with x2, y2 to help us plug that into the slope formula. So we want to subtract the y coordinates from one another. So I'm going to take my second y coordinate, -2, and subtract my first y coordinate, which is 1. Then I'm going to do the same thing for my x coordinates. x2 minus x1, so we would have 4 minus -4. So there's an example of where you'll have a double negative because you're always subtracting the x and y coordinates. So let's do the math now. -2 minus 1 gives us -3. When we have a double negative between two numbers, we can change that to a positive. So it's really like saying 4 plus 4, which is 8. So our slope here of that line would be -3, 8. So this would tell us between each point, we're going to go down 3 units because it's rise over run. And then we would go to the right 8 units. That's how we would move from point to point between any 2 points on the line that has a slope of -3/8. All right, I'm going to go on to the next slide. So again, please take down this example into your notes. So go ahead and click pause now so that you can get this all in your notes. And when you're ready to move on, click play. I would like you to try this last problem on your own. If you needed to find, or you do need to find, the slope between point -8 and 2, 4. So go ahead and find the slope of the line that passes through these 2 points. Go ahead and do that on your own, and then when you're ready to check your work with mine, you can click play. But this is a great time to practice and make sure you understand how to do it right. So go ahead and try it on your own. Click pause. All right, so let's start with, I'm going to subtract my 2 y coordinates. Start with that. So 4 minus -8. We do have a double negative there, and that's all right. And then we're going to subtract our x coordinates. So 2 minus 8 on our denominator. 2 minus 8. All right, we're going to do the math now. We've got a double negative sandwiched between the 2 numbers, so that's going to become a plus. So 8 plus 4 is 12, and then 2 minus 8 is -6. So our slope would be equal to, we can have our negative attached to the denominator, or you can think of it as being attached to the denominator. It's okay either way. It would have the same slope. So either we're going to go down 12 units and to the right 6 units, or we can think of it as going up 12 units, but in this case then we'd be going left 6 units. So we would have the same slope. Each of these are going to have that same movement, and I can show you right here. I'm going to plot 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's that 0.24, and then 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and negative 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That point would be right there. So if we were to connect our points the best I can here, it's a little bit off, but we're going to get the point across. So the slope, again, we can either think of our slope as going, let's see here, down 12 units, so down 12 units and to the right 6 between each point. Or we can think of it as going up 12 units and to the left 6. So either way, if the negative is on the bottom or the denominator, or if our negative is on the numerator, either way you're going to get that same movement. So that's slope, and you're going to get to practice that this week. So that is all. We're going to stop here, and let me write down the key phrase assignment for you. So I'm going to keep this very general, and I'm going to ask you, what is slope? And I want you to tell me 2 things you learned about slope in this recording. And that's all. So tell me 2 things that you learned about slope in this recording. That's how you're going to earn your 10 points for watching the recording this week. Have fun with exploring and reviewing slope and finding the slope of a staircase or stairway around you. Have a great rest of your week, and again, as always, let me know if you need any help as you're working through the assignments this week.